Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geezy Truth News. It's been a long time. We're long overdue for updates. There's been a lot of interesting updates, developments, lots of things going on. And we have a very special guest, Dr. Jim Fetzer, here to digest it all for us. So thank you very much for everybody for tuning in, and let's check things out. How are you, Jim? And let us, let it
Good,
rip.
good. We've had plenty of great conversations in the past. I'm delighted to reconnect with the loss of Skype. I mean, all kinds of crazy things. I've had communication problems connecting with my Revolution Radio studio and all that. We use Discord now. But anyway, I'm glad we're reconnecting. As I see it, Iran is kicking the shit out of Israel. The United States and Israel cannot defeat Iran. It's got to do with geography. It's got to do with the fact that they have been preparing for this for 20, 30 years. The fact they got like 18,000 missiles and the U.S. is running out. As Colonel McGregor put it, we're going to run out of missiles before they run out of missiles. And it's also true that the Iranian missiles are so varied and the interceptors used by Israel in particular are so expensive that basically they've already run out of interceptors. And Tel Aviv and Haifa are now starting to look a whole lot more like Gaza. Little bit of justice here. I'm very unhappy with the ongoing genocide. Most people think Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Israel. Now, this, I mean, the bottom is falling out of support for Israel in this country. I mean, really falling out. I don't believe it can be restored. Israel would love to contrive some event to make Americans support Israel again. I do not believe it's possible. And we've are getting stories now that American troops are being told that Trump is the anointed one and it's God's will that they should fight a war for Israel against Iran. I mean, it's absurd. It's just fucking absurd. And I'm telling you, Americans aren't buying it. We're sick of it. Israel running our government. Nobody wants it anymore. In fact, they just didn't know. They really didn't know. We had this incident just the other day now. We had this former Marine, a sergeant in his dress blues in Congress say no more wars for Israel. And not one, not two, but like five different Capitol cops wound up dragging him off. He was a big guy. I don't know, must have been at least 6'2", at least 240. I mean, he was a hefty guy. And he has this arm in the door to hold it there. In the process, they broke his hand. I mean, it was just outrageous. This is just disgusting beyond belief. I mean, that guy did more good to bring home about the way in which we're censored and can't criticize Israel and we're supposed to go along with it. I'm telling you, we're not going along with it any longer. They played it out. They've had their time. The country is sick of it. I am convinced of this. And, especially since the genocide in Charlie Kirk, there's been this absolute flood of discussion, open discussion about Israel, open criticism of Israel. And all the attempts to change the law to redefine anti Semitism to include criticism of Israel, nobody's going to buy it. And there's even an absurd proposal before the state Senate in Ohio that criticism of Israel, a foreign nation, could wind you 10 years in jail and $1 million fine. I mean, this is just ridiculous. So I think this is the issue of our time. I think the war with Iran has brought it to a head. I think the former Marine, the Marine sergeant, no more dying for Israel. You got to realize 9/11 was an Israeli op. 9/11 was a false flag to trigger American involvement in taking out all the states that Israel wanted to have taken out. None of those states were bothering the United States. not Iran, not Afghanistan, and not Libya. God knows Iran isn't any threat to the United States. Iran isn't even a threat to Israel. It's just that Israel wants to dominate the entire region, and they got Trump, who is some kind of obedient servant of Bibi Netanyahu. Now, exactly how this came to pass isn't completely clear. I actually believe Trump converted to Judaism in 2017. He's got a whole closet full of awards that are historically only given to Jews, including Tree of Life awards. He went to Israel, went to the Wailing Wall. Melania was with him. Ivanka was with him. I'm just telling you, it's very, very bad because he campaigned as a America First guy. I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, not once, not twice, three times. There's no
Same.
question 2020 was a stolen election. Anyone who continues to argue about it, say it wasn't stolen as their head where the sun doesn't shine. There's overwhelming proof. I was all over it at the time. And then you had Mike Lindell bring out experts. You had Ron Johnson, my own senator, bring out experts. You had the 2,000 Mules. I mean, all that was very powerful proof. And, you know, the mail-in ballots, they overdid it. The Democrats went so far on their way to steal that election, they wound up with 81 million votes for a guy who was a non-entity. In fact, it wasn't even the real Joe Biden. My speculation had been Biden died around 2017. The more recent, there's a report saying actually 2019. But I had on my blog forever that the real guy from Delaware and the guy in the White House had different shape and size of head. That's not a feature you can change at Liberty. It's like standing up and sitting down or putting on a green jacket rather than a brown jacket. Different shape and size of skull, different handwriting, different signatures. One's left-handed, the other's right. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And for 4 years, we had an imposter as president, and we have government by auto pen. The issue hasn't quite gone away yet, but it actually has not yet been fully addressed. I mean, it needs to be confronted. And now we got a guy who's a stooge of Israel. I actually thought he was independent, a fresh brush. When he came down the escalator at Trump Tower, I was impressed with everything he said. Ending the wars, he was not an isolationist. He simply wasn't an interventionist. He was a guy who would pick and choose. You know, America would only go to war if it was in America's interest. Then he winds up supporting Ukraine, not in America's interest, supporting the genocide, not in America's interest. Now, supporting a war against Iran. None of this is in America's interest. It costs vast sums of money, puts additional burdens on the taxpayer. And I'm telling you, young people are not going to go and die for Israel in a war against Iran. So I think that Bibi and Trump have made a massive miscalculation. They obviously didn't. Trump doesn't understand anything about military affairs. Pete Hegseth isn't much better. I mean, what a colossally dumb choice to be Secretary of Defense. And he's out there today extolling how gloriously Israel and the United States are doing, when in fact, Israel has already used up all of its interceptors, and Tel Aviv and Haifa are being hit regularly, and it's going to get much, much worse. Iran is not going to be played again. That 12-day war, it was Bibi who pled for a ceasefire because Israel was being smacked around, and then used the occasion, of course, to rearm, retool, reconfigure the plan. Iran is not going to be fooled again. Iran is already on past the 20th wave of missile barrages, the 20th wave, and they're going to keep going. They got 18,000 missiles, and they're going to keep going until Israel is destroyed and the American bases are gone. In fact, basically, the American bases are already gone. We're talking about 27 bases. As the colonel has observed, the only reason there are those 27 bases, the only reason is to protect Israel. So we're there in the Middle East with 27 bases to protect Israel? What the F is that all about? Why should America be spending all its money on Israel? Well, basically, I think in Trump, we've got Bibi as president. I've sometimes said Bibi is the president for foreign policy and George Soros for domestic. It actually makes more sense of a whole lot of recent events in America if you look at it that way. Trump, I think, would like to do good things for America. Certainly the idea of the massive deportation of all the illegals that Biden let in so they could swell up the voting for Democrats was on the right track. And yet it would be so simple. All you got to do is adopt a couple of policies that are similar to those of Mexico. You cannot immigrate to Mexico unless, number one, you can show you have something to contribute to the good of Mexico. For example, carpenter, plumber, doctor, lawyer. Number two, that you have the financial resources to cover expenses for yourself and your family so you don't become a burden on the state. If the United States had those two simple policies for immigration, we wouldn't have a problem. We would not have a problem. But instead, and it's unquestionably been a manifestation of the clergy plan, which was devised in the 1930s to destroy the cultures of Europe by flooding them with migrants from Africa. They've adapted the clergy plan to the USA. And I even have videos I put on shows years ago showing convoys bringing illegals up to the American border, and on the door of the trucks is a Star of David. Well, I don't like that. And of course, the Cloward-Piven plan explains, and every economist understands, you cannot have a welfare state combined with open borders. You're going to overwhelm the system and it's going to collapse. And that's what we've been doing under the Democrats, who are benefiting from the voters they were getting, with all the freebies they were being given. All these illegals coming into the U.S. were going to be voting Democrat. And they had no constraints on them being illegal and still being allowed to vote. So this SAVE Act, I think, is a good idea. You got to be able to prove you're a citizen with state ID. I don't think it's going to, I think Susan Collins made sure it didn't go all the way back, so you have to have a birth certificate or a passport. But you're going to have a state ID. Now, the catch being that in states like California, they got a motor voter law. So when you're issued a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote, and they allow illegals to obtain driver's licenses. So something has to be done to handle that problem. The deportation process, of course, with ICE has been a very mixed bag. Some of these events, I'm convinced, are fake. The petty and good shootings in Minnesota, I think they're both, almost certainly they're both staged. They're both fake. The petty and more obviously perhaps than the good, but I suspect they're both staged. And trying to make ICE look bad. Minnesota, where I lived 19 years, when I was a member of the faculty of the University of Minnesota on the Duluth campus, turns out to be enormously corrupt. I had no inkling of this when I was there. From like 1987 to 2006, when I retired after a 35-year career in higher education, I had no idea Minnesota was so corrupt. But this Walsh guy, I mean, he's a buffoon. He's so totally incompetent. The idea that Kamala chose Walz, but then she's an airhead. She's a nobody. The idea that she should have been the presidential nominee of a party shows a party cannot be serious. She and Joe Biden, by the way, before the 2020 fiasco, made a joint appearance. This is the day before the national election, where he's supposed to got more votes than any other candidate in American history. They made a joint appearance in Phoenix, Arizona, and guess how many people showed up to see them? Joint appearance, very rare. Guess how many showed up to see him? Zero. Zilch. Nobody showed up to see him. And we're supposed to believe this guy got
Wow.
81 million votes. I mean, it's insulting beyond belief. The way the American public has been played politically, it's an embarrassment. And of course, once Trump got in, there was all these efforts to trash him, Russiagate, January 6th, these lawsuits, one phony lawsuit after another. One of them was simply, grossly absurd on its face. Should never gone to court. The C. Jean Carroll thing, where she claimed he groped her in a Bloomingdale's in the middle of New York City, a high-end department store in the middle of the day. But she can't remember the year. Well, if she can't remember the year, obviously she can't remember the day. How can Trump have an alibi? Maybe he was out at his golf course. Maybe he was in the Bahamas. Who the hell knows? The idea that he was put in a position of having to confront and defend himself against a lawsuit where they didn't even know the date on which it allegedly occurred. There's no way a properly conducted legal system would allow such a case to go to court. And that indicates that it had been all politicized by the Democrats to promote their own agenda. All four of those lawsuits were phony, fabricated, ribbed. This Jack Smith guy, ridiculous, a joke. Georgia case, they were all rubbish, complete rubbish. And he underwent two impeachments. They properly failed, but I mean, he had the bill of impeachment in the House and then goes for a trial to the Senate. I do believe now, because of this war and because it's so obvious that he's bending over for Bibi, I mean, it's really bad that the Republicans are going to be wiped in the midterm. I don't see any way around it. When he did the State of the Union address, I thought actually it was a masterpiece of political theater. I'm not talking about the truth or falsity of the claims he made or the policies. I
Right.
disagree with any number. And he made a lot of false claims. I'm talking about his rhetoric as a performance, as a speech. It was brilliant. He boxed in the Democrats on several really important issues to Americans. They sat on their fannies when they should have been standing and applauding. Even asked him, the first role of government is to protect, guarantee the safety of the American people. And the Democrats didn't stand to applaud for that? Are you kidding me? So, I mean, I just saw these devastating commercials coming for the midterm that would make the Democrats look ridiculous. They didn't stand when he was giving out medals of honor. Now, whether they were deserved or not is a whole nother question. But the point is, there were at least a half a dozen occasions when the Democrats ought to have been standing and applauding, and they didn't. I mean, it was a deliberate decision they'd made to wholesale be non-cooperative, but these were issues that were like America First issues. I mean, it was just, I could not believe the stupidity of the Democrats at the State of the Union, but now it's been exceeded. It's been transcended by many orders of magnitude by going forward with a war you cannot win. And it's already cost American bases. The Gulf state countries aren't going to allow American bases to remain in their countries. 27 have already been attacked, and it's going to be ongoing. I've been predicting for a long time when it's said and done, we're going to have lost 5 to 10 ships, 10 to 20,000 troops, and Israel is going to be pulverized. And I still stand by that prediction. I mean, Iran has been planning for this. They're a great nation. They're a peace dedicated nation. Iran, and most Americans don't understand, has not launched a war of aggression against another state since 1775. 1775. Think about it. That's over 250 years.
Mhm.
I mean, because remember the Declaration of Independence, 1776. We're going to celebrate our 250th on the 4th of July, 250th. Well, Iran has actually been around for 2,500 years. Iran has been around since like 550 BC. It's a great nation. It's very principled. These are serious people. They have a very solid culture, traditions. And here we are attacking them and killing them when they're Shia Muslims who believe in martyrdom. I mean, this is a religion that believes if you die in a holy war, a jihad, you go to heaven and you have what? How many virgins? 72 virgins? I mean, it's just incredible. We're going to make war against these people. They're fierce, they're determined, and they have they know they're fighting for the existence of their nation. They're halfway around the world. There's talk about putting troops on the ground. It's absurd, absurd, absurd. Iran is a mountainous country. It has all kinds of defensible positions. If you're having to deal with an invader, they have 1 million-man militia. Typically, in order to undertake an invasion, you need like triple the number you're opposing. 3 million? Are you kidding me? America doesn't even have 1 million men under arms in all of our services combined. Where are we going to come up with 3 million? And as I say, nobody wants to go and die for Israel. So we're in a really peculiar, bizarre situation where we're throwing away our reputation among the nations of the world. We may pull completely out of the United Nations. Trump has taken us a whole bunch of 66, I think, of UN organizations, including the World Health Organization, which I endorse 100% because health has been politicized. They were leaders of the COVID scam, the vaccine. We even had the head of Pfizer admit that their objective was to reduce the world's population by 50%. Well, the world population is 8 billion. So they're talking about having a vaccine that killed 4 billion people, 4 billion people. And it's all for real. I've done a huge amount of research on virtually every one of these issues, but when it comes to the COVID, you look at the stuff that's in the vax, and it's weird. There's all kinds of weird shit in there. There's self-assembling microorganisms. I mean, this is very weird. I have a friend and colleague who's gone and had his blood, filtered to get rid of all this stuff. And we're looking at 4,000 to 6,000 magnification of the contents of his blood. And I mean, it's creepy. And then we have all these morticians, embalmers in the UK pulling out these long fibers. These things are elongated and they're not organic. There's something very weird about them. It's all bizarre beyond belief. And there was, of course, no real pandemic. In 2019, there were 30 million cases of the flu. In 2020, there were only 3,000. Why? Because they reclassified 29,997,000 cases of the flu as COVID to manufacture a pandemic. And yet there was no change in the rate of death during this pandemic than there had been before, meaning there was no pandemic. It was all manufactured. It was all fake. They actually had already patented the vaccines before the pandemic took place. There was a master plan in place. And I do believe before it's all said and done, the COVID, the vax, if it doesn't get us all through shedding, is going to take out about 1 billion. I think it'll wind up, the total will be about 1 billion die from the vax. My own family, even though I was adamantly opposed, and that's went ahead and got the vax without telling me, because they knew I would speak out against it. So they just went ahead and did it. They even got boosters. Now, I'm only hoping that because this is in Madison, Wisconsin, which is already a very liberal area, that they may have got weaker version. It varied by lots. Some of the lots of the vaccine were very toxic, others not so. But it's not even a subject I'm allowed to discuss with the family. So I can't tell them my opinions about the vax. Interestingly, I had lunch on Thursdays. My wife and I have lunch with my daughter and the son-in-law, and we have a wonderful time. And at the end of lunch, my son-in-law asked me what was going on with Iran, and it's like the only time I've ever been asked by the family for an opinion about this. And here I'm doing 26 hours a week on the internet. I got a show on RBN 5 days a week, 2 hours. 3 to 5 Eastern. I got a show Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Revolution Radio, noon to 2 Eastern, and a whole bunch of other shows. I'm doing this constantly. I'm going through hundreds and hundreds of stories, reporting them in the RBN show. The second hour, I take callers. So I was just so flattered that he asked, and I gave him a short summary, very analogous to how I opened in our conversation today. And I was just very touched, actually, that I was being asked by a member of they don't want to talk about all the research I've done on Sandy Hook or a whole host of other subjects. So I was kind of really touched. So in many ways, this was a very meaningful lunch for me for that reason. But I'm very confident about the assessment I'm given. I'm talking about a distillation of work of the best medical military analysts, Colonel Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson, former CIA, Colonel Wilkerson. These are really good people. And a lot of others too, because I'm getting information from multiple sources. I'm processing, at least 100 articles a day. My shows, typically I'm talking about 30 stories. And like yesterday, I think every one of the 30 stories was about the war. Every one of the 30 stories. Now, usually there'd be a block about Ukraine, a block about what's going on in Israel, Gaza, and some stuff about other international relations, and then domestic politics, Trump, Democrats, Epstein files, huge, huge, huge. And then others, about the dominance of Israel controlling our communications, our media, role of censorship, all that sort of thing, finishing off with issues about medical developments and COVID and all that and related issues. But of late, because the war is so dominant, it's been virtually all stories about the war. And of course, this Epstein thing, it turns out it's really, really, really grotesque. They've released, 3 million pages, but they got another 3 million they're holding back. And it turns out the dividing line is of this order. The 3 million they've reversed are basically about conventional sexual exploitation of young girls, but it's not bizarre. I mean, it's all rather conventional, and the fact that they're underage for the most part is the key aspect. Well, with regard to the 3 million pages they haven't released, the situation couldn't be more different, because here it's about child torture to obtain adrenochrome. It's about child sacrifice. And even, grossest of all, consuming children's bodies as food. I mean, it's just grotesque. It's just grotesque. So, I mean, the stories are going to get worse and worse. It's starting to dribble out, but we have very famous people, including some of my favorite actors, are turning out to be major miscreants in despicable crimes. And I'll just say, state of the world ain't what I would like it to be. Very, very far removed and very troubling. I mean, I'm 85 years old. And the idea of living this long life in America and seeing it disintegrate morally, politically, economically, militarily, very, very troubling. Not what I hoped for from a country that I love, was proud to serve as a Marine Corps officer, feel I benefited from in immeasurable ways, to turn into this kind of quagmire. I mean, it's not just a deep state anymore, it's a moral abyss. And some of our most prominent politicians have been part and parcel, and I'm talking about the Obamas, the Clintons, Trump. Melania, I'm less certain about, but the Donald, I don't really have any serious doubts. In fact, it appears part of the reason Bibi could control Donald so successfully is he's got a button he can push that would release all these files on Trump, which enables him to be coerced into actions he otherwise might never take. In this case, Marco Rubio has explained that Bibi wanted the U.S. to join. Trump was reluctant. So Bibi said, well, then we'll go it alone. And because Iran had already declared that if they are attacked by Israel or the U.S., they'll respond as though they'd been attacked jointly. So as Rubio put it, knowing that we were going to be hit by Iran because Israel was going to attack, we calculated that we would reduce American casualties if we joined in the attack. Now, that's all deplorable, despicable, because Iran is a peace-loving nation. Iran is dedicated, already declared it would never strike first, but it's going to be unrelenting now. As I may have already mentioned, they've already had 20 waves more now today of missile strikes, and it's going to continue until all those American bases and Israel are obliterated, and I believe that they will succeed. And frankly, I don't think there's anything we can do about it. While everyone worries, because it's well known, though not officially acknowledged, that Israel has a vast stockpile of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. If Israel were to nuke Iran, I believe other states would nuke Israel. I think that would include North Korea and Pakistan. So that, I'm hoping at the very least it doesn't come to that. But Israel obviously isn't going to be happy with the outcome. They deserve it. They deserve it, especially after the genocide, which has been ongoing. And it's a funny aspect of this, the Charlie Kirk thing. I've got a brilliant colleague who diagnosed how it had been a staged event, that the wound on Charlie's neck moves around, impossible if it were real, that the blood was added by CGI and it isn't actually absorbed by his shirt. And at one point, it flows back upward. I mean, it was done with CGI. And she analyzed all the gestures. It began with Charlie rubbing his nose, and then he's got these friends and do all these kind of like in baseball, giving all the signals. There's a guy in the front, brown shirt, stroking his sleeve to trigger off a blast actually of air. I don't think there was actually even any blood in it that he could react to, falls back, but he's still holding the microphone, should have already dropped the microphone. Even Candace admits there's no blood. She got the footage from the camera behind. There should have been blood everywhere. He wasn't shot by any rifle. He wasn't shot at all. It was all fake. So, this is fascinating. Then you got this woman who takes over, supposed to be Erica, supposed to be his wife. Well, if you go back and look at it, he seemed to have a wife who actually was a whole lot better looking and more lean and trim. It looked like a gal who used to be on Dancing with the Stars. But this Erica is a different kettle of fish. The whole thing about the memorial in the stadium, which, by the way, had been rented like 6 months in advance, was all
Hmm.
CGI. I mean, it was all artificial. They had all these, you know, fountains of streamers, sparklers. Audience seemed to be full. It was all phony. That was totally 100% phony. You got a point where she's grieving over Charlie in a casket, and you only see his hand. Well, it turns out the hand's too large. It's not even a real hand. But there's a study by a guy who spent a whole hour explaining how you could prove it wasn't Charlie's hand by measuring the distance between a couple of his knuckles on the real guy and on the mannequin. The mannequin's hands were too large to be Charlie Kirk. So, I mean, all this thing is unbelievable. Then she gives J.D. Vance this hug where she presses her pelvis up against his body in a very, shall we say, non-platonic fashion. And there's stories and speculation about their affair to be. He's presumably the designee to run again in 2028. The rumors they want to get Trump in there again as VP with Vance. So instead of Trump, Vance, Trump, to circumvent, the clause that you can't run for president more than twice. And then Vance will step aside and try. I don't think any of that's come to pass. I think Trump's health is so bad. He's suffering from serious dementia. He was informed, this is like within the last couple of weeks, that Prince Andrews had been arrested. And he replied to that by saying, well, then the Queen will just have to pardon her son. Not even knowing there is no queen. She died a couple of years ago. We got a king, and it would be his brother. But that's how out of touch this guy has
Hmm.
become. I do believe he is suffering from dementia. He's done a lot of very strange things. This huge ballroom. It's distorting the White House grounds. Very untraditional, even un-American. Then he's got to rename the Kennedy Center, the Trump Kennedy Center. He's even proposed renaming Penn Station in New York City and the Dulles Airport after himself. I mean, the guy's an egomaniac, a narcissist. But the problem is, he's the president of the United States. So he can get us in a lot of trouble, deep shit, and he's done it. We're there. This war with Iran, it's not going to end happily for the U.S. or for Israel. And while I can imagine there may be a lot of stunts to try to make it turn out right, I do not see a happy ending here. So that's kind of an overview. We haven't spoken for a while. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't want to overwhelm, but that's my take and where things stand today. And I'm open to any questions you may have.
no kidding. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. That's a big download. Well, yeah, where to start or end? I mean, pretty much yeah, it's definitely entertaining, interesting times. What can we do? Because everything seems like everything is fake, everything is a Ponzi scheme, everything is like Fugazi. It's like what a lot of people. The good thing is I think a lot of people are waking up. I think the good guys are winning. I think I'll always be optimistic and positive about all of that. A lot of people are waking up, but it seems like they're ramping hard and all the distractions. It's like why all the distractions? We broke the Epstein story over a decade ago. Why now are they talking about like why now? Is the distraction for Iran? Is Iran a distraction? Is there more distractions? What's the end game here?
That's a question.
Yeah, or
Well,
just your thoughts on all that.
the end game is for Israel to rule America, for Israel to rule Iran, for Israel to rule the world from Jerusalem. That's the end game. I mean, that's the master plan for the Khazarian mafia, for the Jewish supremacists. And, Bibi's boasted he's been working on this idea of attacking Iran for 40 years, and and he's given us one absurd reason after another. But I mean, that's what they're working toward. I do believe that it's not going to succeed, that they've overplayed their hand, that they underestimated the resolve of Iran and its preparation, and that this was entered into all too casually. I think it had to do with a couple of factors. Because American support for Israel is falling like a rock. I think Bibi worried that if he didn't do it now with Trump, he might never have the opportunity. And that when Mossad determined where the Ayatollah and his four top commanders were going to be meeting, that they chose that as the occasion to initiate by taking him out. And it was a decapitation strategy, but the Iranians had anticipated. So they already had designated successors for all the military roles. They had a decentralized
Mhm.
retaliation program with their ballistic missiles scattered all over the country. And it's all done in a schedule that works, even if the top leadership were taken out, as it was. And it's continuing to work. Actually, the Iranian plan, if they were to be subject to attack, is working, so far as I can see, exactly as it was intended. And there may be, in the end, 50 waves of Iranian missiles, but I'm telling you, they're hitting their targets. There are occasional false flags, like this thing with Aramco, facility in Saudi Arabia, the world's largest petroleum processing plant, was carried out by Mossad, I have no doubt, to blame on Iran, so that Saudis were supposed to be unhappy with Iran for doing it. But Iran's hitting the American military targets, the bases, which, again, I reiterate, as Colonel McGregor observed, they're only there to protect Israel. So we've spent all this money. And of course, it goes back to 9/11. That was the master false flag to
Mhm.
produce the outcome of having American forces take out the modern Arab states that served as a counterbalance to Israel's domination of the entire region, and eventually to confront the Persian nation of Iran. So 6 of the 7 are gone, Syria having been the 6th. And now they're going after the grand prize, Iran, except I don't think it will succeed. And I do believe Russia and China would step in and not allow Iran to go down if there were that risk. But so far, Iran seems to be handling itself by itself very well, but with assistance from China and Russia both. I, I I'm very strongly supportive of Iran. I visited Iran in 2014. I appeared on press TV many occasions. I hold the Iranian people in very high esteem, and I want them to prevail. Become a severe critic of Donald Trump, especially regarding his foreign policy, notwithstanding voting for him 3 times, and of course of Israel. which is they keep talking about Iran as the great terrorist nation. No, no, it's Israel and the United States that are the great terrorist nations in the world today, not Iran. So I don't know if that rounds out a little what more you'd like. Other
Yeah, I
questions?
guess we'll just continue to keep on and God bless everybody, the USA, and hope everybody, hope for the best, expect the worst.
I'm real pleased to make a reconnection. I'm really sorry that we lost track when the Skype went out and things got mucked
Oh, no
up. So,
worries.
yeah, this
Hey,
is
we all
great.
do the best
This
to
is great.
spread the truth.
I think Easy Truth News is great. I think you do a super job, and it's my pleasure, to join you in the effort to inform the public of what's going on.
Thank you very much, Jim. Well, hopefully, everything will turn out great and we'll have better updates in the future.
Yes, yes, indeed.
But for now, we'll tune in and tune out.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, everyone.
You got it.